Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first international event of the year 2025. First stand, 5 teams come in, 1 goes out the champion. I know what you might be thinking, that's too few teams. Well, I somewhat agree. At the same time, sit down, kids. It's time to get a history lesson.
Into the pit! Into the pit! Everyone get in here!
Yeah, I'm going full Unk status for this one, and I really don't give a shit. First, let's start with a quick introduction of what this tournament is in case you've been out of the loop or have not been following in any capacity. First Stand is going to be a tournament between the 5 winners of the major regions. CFO out of the LCP, Team Liquid out of North America and the LTA, K-Corp out of Europe and the LEC, Hanwha Life out of the LCK, and Top Esports out of the LPL. This tournament is only 1 week long. It is quick. It is a condensed version of the old MSI, but slightly different. So the first stage of this will be the group stage, where 5 teams go in, 4 come out. So only 1 gets eliminated, and we do a single round robin best of 3. We'll talk about the schedule of that in a minute. The 4 teams then come out, and it is a single elimination bracket, best of 5s. All of this, every best of 3, every best of 5 throughout this entire tournament is going to be fearless. So once you play a champion, you will no longer be allowed to play it again. Bans do not count towards that. So by the time you get to game 5, 50 champions will be disabled. Fearless has become incredibly popular over the last 2 months, and it is going to be interesting to see how the first international tournament with it implemented goes, and whether community sentiment still remains as high as it has so far. Now I know what you're thinking. That is so few games in such little time. Here's the thing, old MSI was exactly this, except instead of a single round robin best of 3, it was just double round robin best of 1. Now, granted, there were 13 teams typically that came into this tournament and played because you'd have a bunch of different minor regions. The new LoL Esports format has basically eliminated those, and not many people watched the play-in stages early on. That number started to increase, especially around Worlds, but MSI people didn't really care as much, unless a Chinese or Korean team was still involved, which that's the new MSI format. So you would have 6 teams come in, 4 would go out into knockout stage, and that would be done over the course of 2 weeks. So it was an even longer stretch of time, which is why people ended up growing to hate the format. It was so many best of 1s, it didn't feel like there were enough teams involved for one of only 2 international events. But given that this is now the 3rd one, while I would still prefer to have 2 MSI formats, I'm not gonna lie to you, this is still better than not having a 3rd international tournament, in my opinion. I like international play, even if the time zone is shit for us, because all games will be on anywhere between 3 to 7 a.m. starting time here on the East Coast. What's wild is I've seen people be like, okay, well, this tournament really doesn't matter. And it's like the pride of Europe, like the most accomplished thing that the region ever did was win MSI. You could argue that the World's Finals are technically more important, just making it there, winning the semifinals, yes, we're big, but like the one lone international major win, barring Season 1 Fanatics, World's win, of which Korea was not at the tournament, was MSI 2019. A tournament where it's basically identical to this one here. So while I get the weighting of things has changed as time has gone on, and new MSI, yes, is technically more important and a better tournament from a competitive standpoint, so people are naturally going to weigh it higher, it's not like this tournament doesn't mean anything. The history of North America and Europe typically includes MSI weighted pretty decently when it comes to the times that we finished well. North America, our last international result that we have been extremely proud of, like not just like getting out of group stage and contending in a best of 5 and quarterfinals. While great, the 2 moments that we all look back at are Worlds 2018 with Cloud9 beating Afreeca 3-0 and moving on to the semifinals only to get crushed by Fnatic, and MSI 2019 where Team Liquid had a terrible group performance but went on to upset Invictus Gaming, reigning world champions, pretty much ending their reign. And going to North America's first MSI final since, I think, 2017. It was our first international final in quite a while. And if we were to do it again this year, it would be our first since that event. Unironically, Team Liquid, the team that was there, Impact, the top laner that was there. So for North American fans and for European fans, before you go and slander this event, which I expect from Korean and Chinese fans, remember your history. Remember where we've been, and remember a lot of what made us special in the first place came from an event which was identical to the one that we are playing right now. If we win or pull off any upsets, I want it to be established now before the tournament starts that yes, I do weight this tournament in terms of international importance at about 80% of what MSI is, and MSI being whatever percentage you want of Worlds. We all know Worlds is like the peak of the esport. But I'm not going to sit here and say that this doesn't matter, because if I do that now and then TL does something good, or even K-Corp does something good, then that diminishes everything with this tournament. So you can have whatever beliefs you want. I personally, for this channel and my perspective, am going to weigh this tournament pretty heavily on the international stage, or at least relevance when it comes to conversations and comparing regions, especially between North America and Europe. So let's get into the schedule, because we start off with an absolute heater in Europe versus North America. Team Liquid versus K-Corp, followed up by Hanwha Life versus Top Esports. The way the schedule works is that each team will play 4 best-of-3s over the course of 5 days. So everybody gets one break day somewhere in between. Hence why CFO is not on this first day. That actually does lend in to a bit of mental games that can be played at this tournament. For Team Liquid, we arguably have the best schedule of any region attending the tournament, other than clear favorites in Hanwha Life, who shouldn't be scared of anybody. The first 2 days we play K-Corp and then Top Esports. Top Esports being the team that, like, if we were going to upset, statistically it's probably the most likely. We have a break day, and then we do a similar thing where we play CFO, who's seen as the weakest team coming into this tournament, and then we play Hanwha Life on the final day. So realistically, as long as you beat CFO, and if you potentially if you beat K-Corp on the first day, it pretty much, like, you can not let off the gas, but you can at least relax a little bit knowing that you are probably moving on. All you gotta do is pick up a single win. One team is likely to go 0-5, so that single win and picking it up sometime early on goes a very long way. You compare that to K-Corp, who gets the ringer of this. They play for the first 4 straight days, going Team Liquid, CFO, into Top, into Hanwha Life. In the case that Team Liquid beats K-Corp, all pressure goes immediately on to the next day, and that they have to beat CFO. Because if CFO upsets them there, your remaining 2 opponents are the favorites at the tournament. And then you're waiting on the final day to see if any sort of upset can happen. And your fate is pretty much entirely out of your hands. Your fate for K-Corp will be entirely determined within the first 2 days of this event, whether they will move on or not. From there, we can talk about jockeying for seeding, but we'll worry about that when the time comes. For Team Liquid, it's pretty great. You beat K-Corp, great. Even if you lose that second matchup, you still have the day off rest to prep for CFO, and then have to deal with Hanwha Life later. Now, Team Liquid as a team, historically, has actually been pretty good in terms of their meta reads early on in tournaments and their play early on. If you think back to Worlds 2023, specifically, there was that really close game against T1, but it felt like TL just kind of like nosedived after they weren't able to get any early success in that tournament. It felt like things progressively got worse. You look at MSI last year, they did perform quite well. Again, looking a little stronger earlier on, but slowly finding their footing as the tournament goes on. And Worlds last year probably being the most tragic of them all, where they get eliminated by another North American team, but we're pretty much on similar skill level to FlyQuest. So anybody like writing them off or saying that like Team Liquid really like is kind of coming into this disadvantage from K-Corp or any other team, like I would say no. In fact, let's actually compare it back to the last time that Team Liquid was at this tournament, because I've seen people say, oh, well, TL didn't look great in LTA playoffs and they're coming in just smashing 100 Thieves. Like, come on, like, is that really an opponent that's going to prep you to do well in a tournament like this? Well, let's look back at 2019, where Team Liquid coming in with the best roster on paper after picking up Jensen from Cloud9, still having impact, having Core JJ as their support instead of Ole, who benched himself at the prior year's MSI. Disaster class. Oh God, we ain't going back there. They barely make it to MSI in 2019 by winning against a TSM that had Akaadian, Zven. I think Greg at that time was like swapping out. It was like Akaadian and Greg kind of like swapping back and forth. All Zven had to not do was get caught out. And TSM's in a position, a very good position, to be able to beat Team Liquid and go to MSI in that year. So it's not, let's not sit here and act like TL was on like peak form going into that tournament and didn't actually have a similar narrative to what we are seeing going into this tournament, where until Spawn showed up in Brazil, yes, they did look shaky, and did look like he was running it down at points. But what happened to that 2019 MSI TL? Well, the group stage was not pretty. They didn't look good. They barely squeaked out, and as the 4 seed had to go on to play #1 Invictus Gaming, who they were able to upset, because as long as you make it out, that single best of 5 is all that matters. And I don't want to hear any crap about, oh, it should be double elimination. Sometimes I do like single elimination. I know that's an unpopular opinion, but I stand by it. I really love double elimination for domestic, like regional qualifiers, but then once you get into the biggest tournament, I still have no problem with single elim, even if MSI is a good format. I'm not going to deny that, but I don't need every event to be double elim. Point is, TL clutched up and were able to pull off one of the biggest upsets in international League of Legends history and cement an amazing moment for North America. So coming into this series, coming into this tournament, yes, I have faith that Team Liquid with Spawn and with time to prep can actually get this thing done, because our goal should be to make finals in this event. That would actually guarantee that Brazil, by the way, goes directly to the knockout stage, or like the bracket stage of MSI, which would be hysterical to watch them get pounded in that situation. But that's the goal, and all you have to do, like setting the tone early, would be beating K-Corp and then worrying about Top Esports later in the tournament. Because as long as we can secure that 3 seed, we would likely face Top instead of Hanwha Life. My big individual X factors for this team, weirdly enough, it's actually not Umpty. I think Umpty's going to be fine. Like, I know he's ran it down at points. I think he'll be fine come this international tournament. I think he's going to get his ducks in a row, and it'll be like, he's not going to be the floor that we saw against 100 Thieves, where he had like those 12 deaths or whatever team. I forget who he was playing against. They had 12 deaths. We're not getting that. It was a freak thing. Yes, he's still going to miss smites occasionally and play things wrong. That's what you get with Umpty. But my X factors that need to show up in this tournament are Impact and APA. I don't know why we sit here and pretend that APA has to prove more than he already has in terms of his competency as a mid laner in North America. People act like he has to do something internationally, yet Bjergsen never did anything internationally. Like, Jensen's really the only one with like massive pedigree, and now Quad making it out of group stage. Last time Palafox had like his one time, it kind of fell off, but like, yeah, APA's there. They consistently beat Fnatic last year. Got the better of Humanoid. Say what you will about Humanoid. But I'm not gonna lie to you, I do want to see him like have that moment where people finally have faith in him to perform at an international level. And I think a victory against Top and K-Corp would go a very long way towards that. But just for whatever reason, like, again, my eyes go to Impact. He has been the one where it's like international stage jitters have been a thing for him now. It has gotten in his head, as he noted after Worlds last year. So I want to see him play with that level of confidence that we saw with that Nico game back in 2019. We get that Impact, we're in for a fantastic tournament. Also, CoreJJ, don't run it down early, but I think the lane swap kill thing is actually going to work out in their favor. If you were looking for any sort of like lifeline or optimism towards like K-Corp or anybody else, I already gave it earlier in this video. And if you couldn't tell by the jersey that I'm wearing, you know who I'm pulling for, and this is a North American series. So I'm not going to waste much time on the other teams unless we have to talk about it. So what is the schedule going to look like on this channel? What can you expect from me this week for First Stand? You can expect an overreactions video on Monday, immediately after our series against K-Corp, immediately after Hanwha Life versus Top. I'm going to let people just go buck wild on Twitter. Be sure to be following me at DShynock on Twitter so you can get your overreaction takes. And when I tweet that out, I'll have about an 1.5 hour window where I'll let it ride, and then I'm going to record everything and post. On Wednesday, I will have an episode of The Pit to go over our first 2 series and like actually talk about them in depth. Take a look at the tournament as it's unfolded so far through 2 days to see, okay, well, 3 days at that point, to see, okay, where are we at? How are things going? And what do we need to improve? And then come Friday, we will have one final best of 5 preview for the knockout stage, assuming that we make it. Otherwise, it's just going to be me wallowing in anguish for like 15 minutes straight. So if you have not done so already, it is time to bust out the American pride. That is upside down. We might be in one of the most politically divided times in my lifetime here in America. But rep your American flag, rep your Canadian flag, rep whatever you want to represent North America. Because when it comes to the international stage, when it comes to moments like this, we are all together cheering for one team and nothing else matters. Put all of our differences aside for a moment and come together for a united cause. Because dear God, do I want history in 2019 TL to repeat itself in 2025. It's been 6 very long years since we've made a final at an international event. And I don't give a shit how many teams are here. This means a lot to me.